friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. In case you're new here, my name's Jennifer, and today you're joining me in my kitchen for one of my family's favorite kind of cold weather and holiday traditions, and that is making homemade hot chocolate. So what I like to do is around this time of year, usually a little bit before Thanksgiving, it'll probably be after Thanksgiving by the time you guys see this video, but this is Thanksgiving week here in my house, and basically today I'm going to be making our family's winter's worth of hot cocoa mix, and we're going to just keep that in our cabinet, and then throughout the winter and all the cold weather we can just make hot chocolate whenever we want. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make my two favorite hot chocolate mixes. We're going to make salted caramel hot cocoa mix, and we are going to make peppermint hot cocoa mix. So also, this hot cocoa mix makes a great Christmas gift. If you're looking for a homemade Christmas gift, something that's a little bit extra special, you can package this hot cocoa up in little, like 8-ounce mason jars, something like that, and it makes a great gift. I've done that in the past, so maybe we'll do that again this year, we'll see. So we're going to get started first with the salted caramel hot chocolate. So the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to make the caramel for our hot cocoa mix. You're going to need a pan, and basically what we're going to do is we are just going to melt some sugar, and then we're going to add some vanilla to it. So this isn't going to be like a chewy caramel. We're going to make a hard caramel that we can then pulverize in the food processor here and add to our hot cocoa mix. So starting in this pan here, I'm just going to put in about 2.5 cups of regular granulated sugar. I like to use this organic pure cane sugar. You can see that it is not pure white the way a lot of processed sugar is. It's a little bit less processed. So it's got a little bit of that golden color, which I really like, especially for this recipe. When we're making a caramel, you want a little bit of that deeper kind of caramelized flavor. Now, regular white sugar will work completely fine. So if that's what you have, go ahead and use it. We're also going to be adding brown sugar to the cocoa mix, so that will give a little bit of a caramelized flavor as well. So we are going to go ahead and measure out 2.5 cups of this sugar into our pan here. So I've got a 1/2 cup measuring cup here, so we're going to need 5 of these. And this sugar, or this caramel that we're making, will also kind of double as the sugar in our hot cocoa mix. So we won't be adding more aside from the brown sugar that I mentioned before. Okay, so we've got 5 1/2 cups of sugar in here. So now we're just going to turn the heat on medium, and we're just basically going to let this sugar melt. And once it melts, it's going to develop a nice deep brown color. So we want it to have a really slightly burnt flavor, but we don't want it to really burn. So we do have to kind of keep an eye on it. The recipe does say not to stir it while it melts. And incidentally, as I mentioned the recipe, I am going to go ahead and link the recipe in the video description. So you can just kind of enjoy this video, follow along with it, see the process. You don't have to worry about writing down all the ingredients because I'm going to go ahead and link that. So let's turn our stove on about medium heat, and we're just going, this is going to take a while, but we'll just check on our sugar regularly to make sure that it doesn't burn. Now, while our sugar is melting, I'm going to go ahead and measure out about 3 tablespoons of vanilla. I've got some nice high quality homemade vanilla here. Sugar is completely melted. We're going to pour the vanilla into the sugar, which is going to bubble up kind of crazily, so I'll make sure you guys get to see that. But right now we're just going to prepare our vanilla, and then we're just going to let our sugar melt and add this in once it's melted. All right, so guys, I told you this sugar melting was going to take a while. I stepped away to do something else and completely forgot that I had sugar going. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. It might be a bit overdone. It is not supposed to be bubbly and boiling like this. It is just supposed to be melted and kind of like a dark golden color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the vanilla extract, and then I'm going to pour it out on this cookie sheet over here that I prepared. You want to go ahead and line it with parchment paper or something like that because it is very sticky and you're not going to want to have to clean your cookie sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the vanilla. I don't think that the sugar is really burned, so I'm going to add the vanilla, whisk it in, then we're going to pour it out on that cookie sheet to kind of harden and cool off. If it's way overcooked and if it is burned tasting once it cools off, then we're going to start over. But we're just going to try this and see how it goes. So let's see. Okay, so I decided what I'm actually going to do. I don't want to waste my vanilla in case this is burned. So I'm just going to take a little dollop of it, put it on the cookie sheet, let that cool, taste it and see if it's burned. And if it's not burned, then we'll go ahead and add vanilla to the rest of it. We're just going to take a little bit here. Once I stirred it, I was thinking that it does look pretty dark and it might be burned. So I think what I'm actually going to do is put the spoon that I dipped it in into the refrigerator to cool off nice and fast so I can give it a try. Then we can see if we need to start over or if this is okay to add vanilla to. All right, so I chilled the spoon with a little bit of caramel on it. We're gonna give it a taste. I'm not too hopeful about it. You can see how dark that is. It is not supposed to look like that, so. Thinking that's a little bit too burned. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour this out and put it on the cookie sheet. I'm not gonna get rid of it yet. I might be able to come up with something to do with it, but we're gonna pour it out on the cookie sheet. We're gonna let it harden and cool, and then I'm going to start over with the sugar and meet you back here in just a little bit. All right, so here you can see my really dark kind of burned caramel. We're just gonna let that stay to the side. I'll see if I can come up with something to do with it. Now here is my new batch of sugar. This is 2.5 cups of sugar. This time I am going to set a timer, so I will be back to check on this in just a couple of minutes. All right, so you can see right on the edge here, this sugar is just starting to melt. And if I swirl it a little bit, you can see a little bit of nice golden brown sugar. That's what we want. We definitely want to try to catch it closer to this point than what I did last time. So I'm just going to gradually swirl it. Just kind of let it melt slowly until it's all this nice golden brown liquidy color. Now I'm assuming that the main reason that the recipe says not to stir this sugar as it cooks is because it will really stick to the spoon. But I'm gonna stir it a little bit now that it's really started melting. I just wanna make sure that it melts evenly without burning like last. So you can see I've already stirred it here a little bit. So I'm just gonna mix it around a little bit, and you can see how it really does stick to the spoon. So we're gonna scrape it off, and we may end up losing a little bit this way, but I think that is better than having it burn. Now, if you're experienced at making candy, and if you know if there's another reason why you're not supposed to stir this recipe, can you let me know in the comments? Because I'm not sure if there is another reason. There might be another even more important reason, but I'm not sure what it is. So I'm just going to continue just kind of monitoring our sugar, letting it cook a little bit. Then we're going to take away this burnt sugar here and put a fresh piece of parchment paper here so that it's ready to pour out our other sugar. All right, so our sugar is really starting to melt now. You can see it's getting nice and caramelly and kind of a nice deep golden brown color. So I'm just going to keep swirling it around a little bit. I might give it an occasional stir until it's all melted and all looks like this deep caramel color here. All right, friends, so our sugar is finally done melting. It is a beautiful, rich caramel color without being that dark burned color. So we're gonna go ahead and whisk in our vanilla. You want to be very careful when you whisk in vanilla because it's going to make it bubble pretty violently. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like, and then we're going to spread it out on our cookie sheet. So you can see our sugar is nice and melted. It's a beautiful caramel color. So we have our 3 tablespoons of vanilla in this mug here. I'm just going to carefully pour this in, and then we're going to whisk this until the sugar is smooth again. So you can see that bubbled pretty violently. We're gonna whisk it until it's smooth again. You can see it's starting to really smooth out again, and that smells so good. So now we're gonna go ahead and pour this out on the cookie sheet that we have here lined with parchment paper, and we're going to let it cool and harden. This vanilla, or this caramel, I should say, with the vanilla in it, smells so good. This is going to make some really delicious hot chocolate. This does harden pretty quickly, so you want to work pretty fast to get it out of the pan before it really hardens. So here it is all laid out on our cookie sheet. We're just going to, it's going to take a little bit to really harden and cool off enough to work with. So once that's cooled off and hardened, I'm going to meet you back here and I'm going to show you how to put the rest of our ingredients together. In the meantime, I'm going to get our pan soaking. Now, despite the fact that this is really sticky and messy, it actually is pretty easy to clean off of the pan. If I just soak this in water, this is all going to eventually dissolve, and I'll just have to throw this in the dishwasher and it'll be fine. So it's actually really easy to clean. So I'm gonna let our caramel harden. I'm gonna meet you back here when it's ready. So our caramel has cooled off and hardened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this big slab of caramel here, I'm going to break it into pieces, And then we're going to put all those pieces into our food processor, and we're just going to grind them up into a powder. And here you can see my dinner tonight. My pizza's cooling off. So we'll be eating that in just a minute. So I just kind of take that and drop it. Shatters into pieces. We'll just drop the big ones again. There we go. It's all shattered. There's definitely something kind of satisfying about just dropping something and watching it shatter. Every once in a while, it's fun to do. So into our food processor here, I'm going to go ahead and put all these caramel pieces. All right, so we've got our food processor all loaded up. I'm going to put the lid on, and we're going to just run this and grind it up. It is going to be pretty much deafeningly loud. So I'll go ahead and mute that for you so you don't have to hear it. And then once this is all ground up, I'll meet you back here and we will add the rest of the other ingredients. So you can see in here we've got our caramel all powdered up. Now we are going to start adding some more ingredients directly to this food processor, and the food processor is going to do the work for us. So you can see right in here how finely powdered that is. And now that I open the lid, I can really smell that caramel. It smells really good. So the next thing that we're going to need to add to this is 1.5 cups of cocoa powder. So this is a nice organic cocoa powder that I got from Azure Standard. So we're just going to measure out 1.5 cups of that and add it right into our caramel. So I've got a 1/2 cup measuring cup here. So we're just gonna add 3 of these right in here. Next, the recipe calls for between 1 to 3 tablespoons of salt. Because this is a salted caramel, we want to add a little bit of salt to really bring out that flavor. So we're going to go right in the middle, and we're going to use 2 tablespoons of salt. So basically, whether you use 1, 2, or 3, it's just going to depend on personal preference, just how salty you want it to be. So we're going to start with 2. And I can't remember for sure last year, but I'm pretty sure we used about 2 last year. So we added 2 tablespoons of salt right in there. Now, if you saw my latest Azure Standard video, I got this. This is A2A2 whole milk powder, and I mentioned in that video, I got it just for this purpose, for making hot cocoa mix. So we are going to add 1 cup of this right into our food processor. So this should hopefully make our hot cocoa mix nice and creamy and delicious. Measure out 1 cup of this. So it's a little bit of a heaping cup there, but that'll work fine. So by adding the milk powder right into the cocoa mix, basically, we can now make this cocoa, when we actually go to prepare it to drink, we can now make this with just hot water and we don't need to add milk because the milk is included right in the dry ingredients. So next we are going to add 3/4 cup of brown sugar to our cocoa. Now using brown sugar is going to really bring out that caramelly flavor. So I have a nice homemade brown sugar here. If you haven't made your own brown sugar, I highly recommend it. It's very easy and it's really delicious, and you can control exactly how you want it to be. So we need 3/4 cup. I have a 1/4 cup measurer here, so we'll put 3 of these in. Now we are going to need to add chocolate chips to this as well, or some type of dark chocolate. In our case, we are using chocolate chips, but I'm going to go ahead and mix all of this up before adding the chocolate chips just to really get it incorporated. Then we'll add the chocolate chips in last. And we've packed this pretty full. We have a lot of ingredients in here. So if it doesn't really want to incorporate at first, you can go ahead and kind of give it a little bit of a stir just to break up some of those ingredients on the bottom. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to give it a little stir, and then we will start it back up again. Kind of got some of that caramel kind of settled on the bottom, not wanting to really mix up too much. So just give it a little stir. This actually looks like it's incorporated better than I thought it did. But we'll give it a little stir and then get it going again. Now the final ingredient that we're going to need in this hot cocoa mix is 10 ounces of good quality bittersweet chocolate. So these are bittersweet mini chocolate chips that I got from Azure Standard. They're a good organic chocolate chip. And I went with the mini chocolate chips for this because we are going to chop them up in the food processor. I figured by using the mini ones, the food processor would have a little bit less work. As you can see, it's packed pretty full, so it's already kind of got its work cut out for it. So let's go ahead and add these in. And I just weighed these with my food scale to make sure we got 8 ounces. And I'm just going to give these a little bit of a stir just to get them started. And then we really want to run the food processor and get these chopped up pretty finely. You're going to want these chopped up pretty finely because the idea is that when you add boiling water to it, you want the water to be able to melt them, and it'll be able to melt them a lot more evenly if they're tiny little pieces. So let's go ahead and get this running again. All right, let's take a look at this. We're going to see how finely our chocolate chips are chopped up, and we'll see if we need to chop them up anymore. So that looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any big chunks. You know, there are some in there. I think I'm gonna run it a little bit more just to be sure, especially since this is so full. We wanna make sure we get everything chopped up evenly. All right, so this looks pretty finely chopped up now. So what we're going to do is pull out our canning funnel. We are going to put this all into a jar and it'll be ready to use. Now, to actually prepare this hot chocolate, how much you add is going to depend on how much water you're using. It's also going to depend on how strong you like your hot chocolate to be. I usually use about 3 tablespoons or so to about roughly a cup of water. I don't really measure, so I'm not sure exactly how much water I use. But, you know, just kind of play around with it and see what strength you like your hot chocolate to be and figure out what works for you. So let's go ahead and get this packaged up, and then we are going to make our peppermint hot cocoa. So I love making a big batch like this. This really gets us through the cold months. It's also kind of a family tradition to drink hot cocoa while we're putting up our Christmas tree. So I wanted to make sure to get this made before Thanksgiving because we're probably putting up our Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. So we're gonna have this all ready. And as I said before, it'll probably be after Thanksgiving by the time you guys see this. But right now, as I'm making it, it's before Thanksgiving. But this is a great treat to have all winter long as it stays cold out. So this is not all going to fit in my quart jar. We may need a second quart jar, so I'm gonna grab another one and we'll see how much mix we make. So we got 2 full quart jars of our salted caramel hot cocoa mix. So I may end up packaging some of this up and turning it into Christmas gifts because this is a lot, especially since we're also going to have peppermint. And I definitely think this is more than our family needs. And I know I have some friends and family that would definitely appreciate some homemade hot cocoa mix. So we're going to put that to the side. Now we're going to get started making our peppermint hot cocoa. Now you can see I'm not bothering to wash out my food processor because we're basically using all the same ingredients. The only thing that's going to be different is the caramel, which is basically just sugar and vanilla. And we'll be using the sugar in this, we just won't be cooking it this time to make it into caramel. And we'll be using slightly less salt in this recipe. So this recipe will basically be the same. We're going to be reducing the salt to ½ a tablespoon. Now I honestly can't remember exactly how much salt I used last year, but I think ½ a tablespoon will be good for this. We want just a little pinch of salt to bring out the flavor, but not enough to make it taste salty. And then we will be adding one additional ingredient, which is some candy canes. Now again, I can't remember exactly how many I used last year, so we're going to be starting with 6. I may end up needing more than that, but we'll start with 6 and we'll see how minty it is. And yeah, we'll just give it a taste test and find out. So right into our food processor here. Remember we used 2½ cups of this granulated sugar in our salted caramel hot cocoa. So we're going to put 2½ cups right in here. It won't be cooked into caramel this time. Now remember we need 1 cup of our whole milk powder. One and a half cups of cocoa powder. You can see that I'm not being all that incredibly precise with these measurements. As long as you're close, it's gonna be good. Now we're going to add just a little bit of salt. As I said, ½ a tablespoon. Now this isn't meant to be a salty drink, but remember this is making 2 quart-sized jars full. So ½ a tablespoon spread out between that is not going to be salty at all. So we'll add our ½ tablespoon salt right in here. And then 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Now, since this recipe isn't meant to taste caramelly like the last recipe, if you want to just add this 3/4 of a cup regular granulated sugar instead and omit the brown sugar, that's completely fine. I'm going to keep the brown sugar in there because I like that flavor. even though it is a little bit caramelly tasting, but I think it'll work fine. Let's add our 3/4 cup of brown sugar to this. Now, just like when we made the other hot cocoa, we're going to mix all of these ingredients first, and then we're going to add the chocolate chips at the end. We're going to wait and add our candy canes when we add our chocolate chips. So let's go ahead and get these mixed up. Now, if you are making both flavors like I am, I recommend making the caramel first because the peppermint has kind of that distinct pepperminty flavor. And if you make that first, a little bit of that flavor will transfer to the salted caramel one, where a little bit of salted caramel flavor transferring to the peppermint is fine. So we've got all our ingredients incorporated. I've measured out 10 more ounces of our mini dark chocolate chips. We're going to add those in, along with our 6 candy canes. I'm guessing this is probably not going to be enough candy canes, but we're going to start with this and see how it is. Now, as I unwrap the candy canes, I'm just going to go ahead and break them into chunks and put them right in here. All right, so we've got all our chocolate chips in, our candy canes are unwrapped. We are just going to run this and see how pepperminty it is. All right, let's take a look. So that smells nice and minty. But looking at it, I don't see as many peppermint flakes as I'm used to seeing. So we're going to add, I think I'm going to add 3 more candy canes and see if that's enough. We may end up having to double it and add 6 more. I will let you know. So let's take a look. Okay, so I don't know if you can really see it on the camera that well, but there's definitely more peppermint now that we've added those 3 additional candy canes. So I think that's the right amount. I think 9 candy canes is the way to go. If I end up trying it out and deciding that it needs more peppermint, I will go ahead and put it up on the screen and let you know if I added more candy canes or not. But for now, I think 9 candy canes is good. So we're going to package this up in a couple more jars, and then we will be definitely well stocked for hot cocoa this year. So we are definitely stocked up for the winter with our salted caramel hot cocoa and our peppermint hot cocoa mix. So we are going to look forward to enjoying these just to warm ourselves up when it's a little cold outside. So I hope that you guys are inspired to try making your own hot cocoa mix. It's really, really easy. It's really delicious. You can kind of customize it a lot more than what you find in the store. You can play around with flavors, and you can use really high quality ingredients to make a really good hot cocoa. So I hope that you guys give it a try. If you have made your own hot cocoa mix before, let me know what flavors you used. Did you just make a regular hot cocoa, or did you use some kind of fun flavor, especially if it's different from a flavor that I mentioned here. So I definitely encourage you guys to give this a try. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you're staying warm this winter, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye guys, I'll see you next time.